Dear colleagues, we're just waiting for attendees to come in and settle into the system, and then we will start with our 1 minute or 90 seconds video, and then we will proceed with the session. Thanks a lot for your patience and interest. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, colleagues, welcome to the 17th LGMA webinar towards COP26. My name is Yunus Arikan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at Local Governments for Sustainability, ICLE. I'm also acting as the focal point of Local Governments and Municipal Authorities constituency to the UNFCCC. I'll try to moderate and also present this webinar in my capacity as the focal point. Just to check, Patricia, my screen, are colleagues able to see this at the moment?
No, you're not sharing screen.
I'm not sharing the screen, so I should share my screen. Let's start with this. Is that fine now?
Now we can see it, yes.
Okay, good. So the Local Governments and Municipal Authorities constituency is the coordination body that represents networks of local and regional governments in the UNFCCC process since 1995, the first conference of the parties. What you have seen here, the video, is a short snapshot of what we have achieved in Paris and afterwards. You can see a compilation of our celebration of the 50th anniversary of Paris Agreement in our website, in the YouTube channel. You can also follow the recording of the previous webinars since the beginning of the 2020 monthly basis that you can catch up. This webinar is announced throughout the world through ICLE's channels, social media. Therefore, participants sometimes may be new. Therefore, in a normal flow of our session, we start with the basics. For some, let's say, seasoned participants of our webinars, some of those information may be repetitive, but we are trying to keep the dates or information as fresh as possible. Then we focus a bit more what we have achieved over the past, since the last 3 or 4 weeks. Then we focus on the most highlighted things that is on our plate and towards the next couple of months. That is our format. This webinar is recorded, as you have seen at the beginning. And during the webinar, you are all muted. And you can type your questions in the chat box or Q&A session. We can try to respond momentarily, or we can keep this or park this to the discussion session, where we'd like to encourage all the participants to raise their hands so that we can give the floor to them. so that anything missing or anything to be added from the members of the LGMA constituency or any other participants, we can be happy to receive this. So with this, let's continue to our presentation for this round. For there is a huge momentum in the policy agreement from the cities and regions perspective. There's a very natural reason for that, because Paris Agreement has opened a new era. Obviously, we have a framework convention, we have Kyoto Protocol for a limited period, but the reason why Paris Agreement is important is that it is universal, every party is committed, but even more than that, it is not national governments, it is multi-level recognition, multi-stakeholder action is recognized in the preambular paragraph. We have a special paragraph for recognizing the importance of engagement of all levels of government. The second point is that 1.5-degree goal is enshrined as an ultimate goal. That is a completely new world that we're living today, living today. And climate neutrality is also foreseen as the road towards achieving 1.5-degree goals, so that everyone who is part of the Paris Agreement are committed to those. Obviously, there are national governments' responsibilities. First of all, their current first NDCs, the national determined contributions, are not fit for Paris Agreement. Why? It's very clear, because they all were prepared before Paris Agreement was agreed on. It was originally intended NDCs. So any document that was submitted or that is currently on the table are not fit for Paris Agreement. That's why LGMA, but like many other partners, we are asking for national governments to bring NDCs before COP26. So that has to be done, whether a virtual or in-person COP is taking place this year or next year. This NDCs has to be developed in-house at the countries, at home, and before COP. The UNFCCC regularly provides summaries of information. End of July is the date that is taking into account this information. So ideally, every NDCs should be fresh and new before July. Local and regional governments, we have a responsibility. We are not anymore voluntarily taking climate action, because we are recognized in the Paris Agreement. We have a duty to commit to climate neutrality by 2050. By the latest, we have a duty to adjust our plans for 1.5-degree goals. So this is our new reality, that we have to refresh all our municipal or state or regional government plans and commitments, from the councils to the administrations. And obviously, 1.5-degree goals and this huge, massive goals of Paris Agreement cannot be done neither by national governments nor local governments. We have to reach out to every stakeholder, every actor, so that it is a transformation that is shared by all, so that everybody feels that they are part of this transformational agenda. This shows as of May 21, this is a cyclic process. The UN climate conferences are held every year. It is convened politically by national governments, which is rotated among the regions. Every year, the country who will host the COP will start to be announced as the incoming or president designate. The country who hosted the year before the COP takes the overall political responsibility. So as of today, because of the COVID, we have an extended period. We have Chile and the driver's seat as political responsibility until COP that will take place in Glasgow. When the moment the convention, Conference of Parties starts, officially presidency will be handed over to the UK, and then this will continue throughout the rest of the period. In between, there were intermediate talks that's called subsidiary body meetings. This time it went into virtual in May 2022, 2020, but also this year in 2021. UK, they have created new modalities of appointed new stakeholder representatives, ambassadors. According to the Paris Agreement, we have an official mandate of high-level climate action champions. This is Gonzalo Munoz from Chile and Nigel Topic. But the UK has gone beyond that. They have created Friends of COP. They have created finance advisor, adaptation advisor, regional ambassadors. They have also created spatial advisory bodies, advisory councils. So that is trying to demonstrate that it is much more inclusive. And lately, they have appointed Sir David Attenborough as the people's advocate, which is slightly different than the rest of the mandated bodies and councils. We are saying that every year it's a cyclic process. We have mechanisms, but we also are trying to adjust our priorities to the priorities of the presidency. So the presidency just last month announced that they have 4 priorities: mitigation, adaptation, finance, and the last one is collaboration. collaboration with across parties, but also non-party stakeholders. That is much more encouraging. It's much more inclusive. Therefore, we are excited. This is responding to the priorities of the constituency, where we wanted to make sure that COP26 is the multi-level action COP. And that was our dream that was started. We'll get onto that in a second. The process now is going into multiple tracks. The first one is the regular UNFCCC process. It's taking year-round engagement, and we have seen in the last 3 weeks, there is also a special, let's say, annual meetings. Then there's presidencies having consultations with the delegations. Those are not open for participation of stakeholders. We can send some texts or questions, but we are not part of these discussions. Some special events are taking place. And then high-level climate action champions are also running this immense mobilization about race to resilience, race to zero, breakthroughs, and climate action pathways, documents, and files that will be basis of our climate neutrality pathways or 1.5 degree goals. So this is the three, let's say, prone engagement modality, and how we want to make ourselves heard there. Well, by the time we left Madrid in 2019, December, we said that we have 6 pillars in time. We have with the Glasgow, we have elevated to 7 pillars. So we would like to localize Paris Agreement. We will have an ambitious commitment, which is now formulated through races. We would like to have multi-level NDCs, vertical NDCs. That's coming more, the US, Chile, Dominican Republic, through numerous processes. And we're hopeful that countries like Japan and Korea will also come up with this, let's say, generation of multi-level NDCs. We will accelerate different modalities or themes, sectoral, working on mitigation, adaptation, food, nature, circularity. We will expand the climate community to ministers of urbanization, culture, the youth and education community, and we will work on climate justice. And obviously, we are now focusing on a COP mode. We are getting more involved in many events and summits. What we are seeing breakthroughs, we are seeing game changers. The Biden summit has announced a number of initiatives. Particularly, we are very happy with the US-Japan climate agreement. Biodiversity is demonstrating a very impressive version of how we can engage in the UN process. We will get into that again. The Edinburgh process is becoming now an official track under the UN Biodiversity Convention. And with UN Habitat and numerous partners, we are seeing more and more call for urbanization becoming a mainstream into the process. So with what we have achieved over the past 3 weeks, sorry, let's say 4 weeks, we have seen some major progress or outcome from the G7 process. G7 is now under the president of the UK. Obviously, it's a huge advantage, UK being the host of the presidency of the G7, but also the COP26 presidency is a great opportunity that they can align many of those things. We have seen environmental ministerial communique and some initiatives. There are specific paragraphs for local action, local governments, which is very encouraging. We have seen finance ministerial, it was also encouraging. But when it comes to summit, the G7 summit, which is heads of state, some of those ambitious expectations have been a bit lowered down. With the more, let's say, official communique is a bit less ambitious than what you have seen, but still it is really good at the heads of state level. Over the past 5 years or so, we haven't seen this alignment that all G7 countries have their climate neutrality targets by 2050, also 2030 ambitious. Obviously, vaccination is a new agenda that is still not clear how much G7 will support this. And obviously, beyond commitment, G7 has a responsibility to mobilize resources in terms of solidarity and their historic responsibility. There were more higher expectations that didn't fulfill that much, but that's not the end of the process. There will be more opportunities to come. This year in the G7, we have for the first time seen the cities and local and regional governments getting engaged into the process through Urban 7 Summit that was held in 9th of June. It was endorsed by the networks of all G7 countries. In parallel to G7, there is G20, obviously. G20 heads of state summit will be in the end of October. But this time, the Urban 20, which is starting since 2018, has released their communique in terms of trying to influence the process. As of today, 22 cities from the 14 G20 nations have endorsed this. There are also non-G20 cities as well. So these are good signals that at least there is a mobilization going on. Over the past 4 weeks, there was an important engagement. We have touched upon some country experiences. We had discussed US, Japan, and South Korea come onto the stage. They hosted partnerships for Global Ambition Summit, P4G. And the first day of this process was witnessed an immense commitment. All Korean local governments, more than 200 of them, they commit to climate neutrality by 2050. This was an elevation of their commitments. Last year, they have committed to climate declarations, of climate emergency declarations. And several of them, around 100 of them, have committed to climate neutrality. With this P4G outcome, they have managed that all local governments in Korea are now committed to climate neutrality. This is a huge opportunity for the Korean NDC to be more ambitious. We hope to see it in the next couple of weeks. UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration has made 5th of June a remarkable agenda. On the same days, Race to Zero celebrated its 1 year with more than 4,500 participants, including 700 plus cities in the Race to Zero campaign, and more to come in the years and in the months ahead. In the biodiversity, similar to the discussion, we will focus on the climate negotiations. There was also a biodiversity. It was more than 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks of negotiations. But the uniqueness is that the way engagement of local energy groups are much more advanced there. And the Edinburgh process, that was originally a bottom-up proposal with Scottish government, the networks. It was with the CBD Secretariat. The good news is that the UK government officially submitted to the CBD process. The negotiations have taken place. They have discussed, and the parties enabled chairs of the subsidiary bodies of implementation to present this as a proposal agreed by all parties. There's only 2 minor points that was under brackets. We all know the biodiversity negotiations are also not kicked off, so all the things are to be read to be approved. But at the moment, the Edinburgh process outcome, which is a second 10-year action plan, is now a conference room paper without major breakthrough, without major brackets. It is a remarkable achievement. It's a remarkable mobilization and a collaboration at all parties and stakeholders. Therefore, we consider this as a good practice, and this we'll hope to be feed into the climate negotiations and other processes as well. But that's a remarkable achievement from the biodiversity community. Around the same weeks, there was a joint IPCC publication. So IPBES is the scientific body of biodiversity. IPCC is the scientific body of climate. They have jointly prepared a report. That was a good example of collaboration across sectors. So we would also like to see this coming up more. Over the past weeks, we have heard from the UK presidency that they have informed the applicants for their managed zones in the blue zone or green zone. This was a first response. What they did is that they said that those applications who received to be eligibility to the next stage are informed, and those who are failed, they couldn't manage it into that green zones, they are informed. So the next step will be that some of those events will be fine-tuned because of the conditions of physical space and virtuality. So in the next couple of weeks, we may see more discussions both with the UK and the applicants that some of those events may be combined or merged. Other than that, as of this week, we are seeing there will be high-level dialogues on energy. There's discussions on food. Food dialogues are taking place across the world, and transport conference hosted by China is also announced. This will be in October. We'll see how much virtual. And an important thing is also going on in the UN Secretary General level. There is a new appointment. Antonio Guterres is appointed as in the second term by the UN Security Council, or also appointed by the UN General Assembly. We wish him the best of success. And he has an ambitious vision of a new way of work of UN in terms of reforms, but also engagement. It's called Our Common Agenda. And within this, there's also a discussion on the future of cities. So the mobilization or networking among the UN and the relation with the UN system is also evolving, which is encouraging, because by the time we see a biodiversity plan, by the time we see a second phase of Paris Agreement, and with the new UN reformed process, we could be much more confident for the decade, in the next 8 years. I would like to take you through to what has happened over these 3 weeks, not like day by day or theme by theme, but here I would like to give you some highlights, and in the next slide I will show you the links that we have available. The first thing that has happened over these 3 weeks is that virtual UNFCCC negotiations, or let's say consultations, because there's no agreement yet, is demanding. First of all, definitely it needs more time. It's traditional and physical meetings is convened 1 or twice, but now you have to think about across time zones. So one theme could be discussed in a number of times. So therefore, it has to be a longer period, both preparations and also real taking place. It needs more skills. It needs more skills in terms of use of technology. It needs more skills in terms of connecting to our constituencies. It needs much more new tools. Even the UNFCCC have mobilized a new software which has new features, which has new elements, that is offering new, let's say, that demands more, let's say, mechanisms of submitting your speakers, that they are accepted or their connections are done. So these are all processes that takes time and experience, and especially because it's done for the first time, everybody is testing this. Obviously, probably the next phases, next iterations will be much smoother, much more easy. We have seen this. I can definitely give you the example from the Copenhagen. In Copenhagen, everything was on Excel sheets in written form, and the UNFCCC Secretariat took a lot of important experience to transform all these registrations and nominations to a virtual IT system. And in the first phase, it was difficult because we have to apply every information. But starting from the second year onwards, we have seen how easy to use this kind of systems, so that that's exactly the most important demanding thing, is that we need patience. We need patience from the participants, we need patience from the observers, the legal bodies, and the patience from the stakeholders as well. I think we're getting there as such. And it's not a bad thing to have demanding things, because at the end, when you're demanding something, you are rewarded. The rewarding is that we have more interactions, be it virtual, face-to-face, in the virtual platform, but also in the communication system, that it's possible to have much more interactions. We can have much more transparency, because what you spoke, how much you are interested in the system, how many of them have participated, it's much more trackable and accountable, that you can see how much these discussions are there. Obviously, there's a discussion about access to some of the meeting agendas, which is blocked for some of those informals. But we are also seeing that parties are advancing in this culture of being more open-minded and open modalities. And obviously, it's also rewarding us in creating new innovation modalities. The way of the use of the software is giving us more opportunities for better interaction. We have seen there are, in many agenda items, it's a long list of topics, from scientific bodies to the implementation bodies. Many issues are seeing progress, even though they are not approved. But we have seen informal notes, we have seen reports from the sessions, we are seeing the data that is coming up from every discussion agendas. But the ones that is making the difference, which is finance, the mechanisms, from flexibility mechanisms from the Kyoto era to the new Paris Agreement, transparency and loss and damage, these need huge political commitment, which can only be done by the ministers, and in some cases that we have seen in the G7 heads of state level. And if we do not see this momentum, even those conferences are held in virtual and in person, it doesn't matter, because these negotiators need approval from their higher political leaders. Therefore, the next couple of weeks are more important than whether it's virtual or physical. That is the thing that will have to come in the face. What we are seeing in the discussions, from capacity building to action for climate empowerment, arrangement of intergovernmental meetings, or other mechanisms, the parties should be started to feel that the new NDCs, because they're engaging so much the local and regional governments, they have to be also opening the space for us, for local and regional governments and others, that these modalities should be much more inclusive, because the national progress reports will mention that here's what we have done with local and regional governments, here I'm doing what, so that it has to be a new phase coming up. And that's, I think we are seeing this, and that's also the appetite. Many of the processes are opening doors for local and regional governments as well. and elevating collaboration with UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action, from the LDC community to African group, from the umbrella to environmental integrity group. There are so many parties opening more and more spaces for us, so that a new way of work with the Friends of Multi-Level Action will come to the space more often. And finally, throughout these 3 weeks, LGMA interventions, both in the opening and closing plenaries, and also in the thematic discussions, we heard how respect has been expressed from the parties and secretariat and the partners, that the more we talk about concrete proposals and innovative ideas, it is taken up by the partners, and that it is producing concrete results that everybody is enjoying. The more we are presenting ideas, it is providing input to the process and it producing results. This obviously, I will not go through this in all details, but we can have all the links available. We have made opening and closing remarks. These are all available. The files are there. We have made some interventions and some selected ideas. Some of those are not visible to the public. Some of them are only reserved for the platform users. Some of those information are easy to find in terms of the documents, but some are not so easy to find. And we will keep all those updated in the LGMA COP26 website, in the citiesandregions.org/COP26 as well. And we also recommend you to have a careful reading of the ENB. It's always helpful to read this semi-formal coverage. So now, taking into account what's going on, what we would like to discuss with all the partners of LGMA from now on the next couple of weeks is, we have started to see now that we are now in a COP mode. With or without a virtual or in-person meeting, there will be things to come up. So what we started in our ideas in the December in Madrid, what we wanted to say towards a multi-level action COP, is in fact happening. It is happening at home, at the domestic level, at the national level, and it's happening at the UNFCCC level. So we had 7 pillars. We wanted to diversify the themes, but now it's time for us to consolidate. And we have to make it for COP26 outcome oriented. What will we be seeing in the Glasgow Declaration? What will we be seeing in the Glasgow decisions? That's how we have to turn our mindset into this logic. So under these conditions, our first exercise we'd like to discuss with you from this meeting onwards is that, first of all, we have to expect a Glasgow Declaration which gives a reference to multi-level action as the new normal. We have seen many countries embracing a multi-level, but it's not a must. It is optional, and we have to say that it is something that is encouraged by all parties. And if this can be entrenched in the Paris Agreement related paragraphs of the Glasgow Declaration, saying that we invite all parties to embrace multi-level action, multi-level NDCs, that could be something that could be a good signal. Second, multi-level is a political process, local and regional governments and national governments. But sustainable urbanization is more than that. It is also not anymore always in the hands of the mayors, because we're talking about a new list of cities that will be built completely from scratch, especially in the developing countries. This is an urbanization. It's a sector. It's like agriculture. It's like a theme that is has to be discussed by many stakeholders. So what we could think about is that, especially in the Article 6, the finance discussions, there is a discussion on non-market mechanisms. If we can convince parties to consider sustainable integrated urban and territorial development as a concept that is something that is helping to mitigation, adaptation, and capacity building, it could open a new completed door for us. This could be a new work program under the UNFCCC, on the Paris Agreement, like capacity building, like Coronavia on agriculture, or Santiago Network on loss and damage. So we could come up with some kind of a proposal, and this could be particularly benefit from the UN biodiversity negotiations, this Edinburgh process as watch. The third is that, be it in the UNFCCC, be it in the multi-level, we have to make sure that the climate action is just, it has to be inclusive, it has to be holistic, it has to be nature friendly. And that connects to our work with Glasgow, the city of Glasgow, this new era of a new generation of industrialism. industrialization. That has to be much more inclusive. Could be something that could be an outcome of our work, but also be inspiring the UNFCCC process as well. And finally, the fourth, this is the fourth corner, is that, as you have seen in the negotiations, there are so many bodies, there are so many mechanisms that the way LGMA connect itself to the process has to be much more robust, much more professional. We have to have much more focused working groups among ourselves. And that's why we would encourage us to consider a new way of internal institutional working model, so that we can make sure that throughout the Paris Agreement second phase, we are visible from loss and damage to capacity building, from finance to Nairobi Work Program, all elements of Paris Agreement and the Katowice rulebook, which is implementation at home. We have to be making our delegations, making our constituents ready for that. I'm now getting to the last couple of slides of my presentation. This is the next couple of weeks, what to expect into the process, because these will be shaping how we will end up in COP26. First of all, 29th of June, you heard from the UNFCCC that the Blue Zone side event, which will be in person, and exhibits, which will be virtual, will be starting to kick off. There will be 4 days of a process where applications will be able to be presented. Then UNFCCC Secretariat, the COOL team, will manage that. Some of those will be asked for merging of those events, because very likely there will be more applications than available space. So this will take time. And we are aware this will be announced by the end of September, which is pretty challenging, because if you only hear that your side event is accepted 1 month before COP starts, how will you make your vaccines? How will you make your badges? It's a challenge, but let's see. So the 29th of June is an important date. 30th of June is an important date, not for us as observers, but for the negotiators. That is the date when the presidency, Chile and UK, will invite heads of delegations for an assessment, stock take, let's say. Where are we since the negotiations? And that is the moment we are expecting, and we are hoping there will be clarity, especially what is the space of the Blue Zone and this issue about vaccination. Because as of today, we are all aware the UK is still planning to host a COP like it was before. We haven't seen yet any official plan on how they would like to ensure vaccine procedures, COVID measures, and we also haven't seen how this will influence the Blue Zone plans, how much we will be able to provide presence there, capacity and dedicated to quotas. We hope that the meeting on the 30th of June, especially this vaccination process, will be announced there. This is important because you're all aware it takes 2 weeks for anyone to be fully confident about that vaccines are in charge after you receive your second vaccine jab, which means that there's at least 8 weeks for anyone to be safely planning for any travel to Glasgow, which means beginning of September. And then that's the moment where whether there will be a vaccine available from the UK to the delegations, who will distribute this, who will define, who will get that, how will this be decided on, because that's also applying only to the Blue Zone accredited people, which is extremely limited. So these are all questions. The more you start to discuss about that, the more questions you come up with. And it's even, at the beginning, it sounds like great inclusiveness that the vaccines will also be made available for civil society. But what is the role of the networks, constituencies to distribute these vaccines? It's a huge nightmare. Those who are familiar, even the allocation of badges in the Blue Zone is a nightmare. Having Blue Zone vaccines is even worse than that. It is a challenge. 2nd of July, commercial pavilion spaces, now it's opened. All the accredited organizations have received this. There are cost implications, obviously. The office space, the Blue Zone pavilion space, there are new options, but it is significantly challenging in terms of the amount of money that has to be mobilized. So there are certain aspects of that. And that is also still not clear, because 2nd of July is only an expression of interest, but it is not clear at the moment what is the cost of furnitures, equipments, that an additional 100% similar account will have to be considered to be planning. That is also a challenge. So, but it will take some time. In the middle of July, there will be in New York high-level political forum, SDG 13. That's the ministerial, let's say, momentum. 20th, 23rd of July, Italy, G20 Climate and Environmental Minister will be held by Italian presidency. And a couple of days after, 25th, 26th of July, UK government announced a special extraordinary ministerial to be held in London to discuss the roadmap. Obviously, the vaccinations models will very likely be decided before, because this has to be processed physically, but political outcomes can still be discussed in September, or sorry, July, August, September. So the role of this 30th of June heads of delegation meeting and the ministerial in the end of July is slightly different. And we are expecting that by the time ministers meet in the end of July, whether parties will be having vaccines or whether there will be an in-person meeting in COP, how will all has to be cleaned up or clarified much before this ministerial, because if they wait for the ministerial, it will be too late to manage this process. And one of the last slides, there are huge questions about what to expect in Glasgow in terms of day-by-day planning. This, I must confess, this is a combination of the chart that is communicated by the high-level champions, which is Marrakesh Partnership events, and these are all work in progress, and these are all drafts. You can see day-by-day planning, but this chart does not include the beginning and the end of the COP. So for LGMA, obviously we are in part of ICLE and many partners are part of Marrakesh Partnership, but for us, COP is more than Marrakesh Partnership. So this green screen that you are seeing here is the one that is worked out or prepared by the champions, which we will circulate as well after this presentation. And we added these blue, yellow, green boxes as what could happen. And once again, these are not communicated by presidency or UNF secretary. It is the LGMA focal point, let's say, expert judgment or expert information. One thing is clear. By the time the UN meetings was concluded, Secretariat communicated that COP official date is extended one day before, so that on Sunday, officially COP will be opened. And that will be the moment where the presidency will go from Chile to UK. And the day after, 1st of November, will be the first day of the Leaders Summit. It will be heads of state. It will be continuing for 2 days, so 1st and 2nd of November. There are rumors that there will be roundtables with civil society, but who or which civil society, there are huge possibility or serious possibility that this could be the ones that are engaged in the race to zero and race to resilience. But it is not confirmed, and we are not sure that this will be the case. Therefore, we put this into brackets. But there is a vision that there will be some of the stakeholders involved in this first 2 days as well. The rest, as you have seen, the action agendas, events that Marrakesh Partnership is planning this year is interestingly, or the uniqueness of this year is that it is going until the last day of COP. And the last day is the Cities and Regions Day, Cities and Regions and Built Environment Day. So we are expecting some of our mayors or political leaders will be engaged in these roundtables, very likely in person. And throughout these weeks, there will be several events that we will also be engaged in, because cities and regions are also contributing to land use, water, energy, resilience, finance, all elements, transport. And then a special day for cities and regions built environment on the Thursday. And then the last day will be having the conclusion, whether it will be finishing exactly the same day or will be extended like other COPs, we don't know. But that is the picture. And here is, again, the next comes from ICLE's judgment, and that will be concluding of my presentation here, is that we're expecting, as ICLE, we're expecting a realistic scenario under these conditions in Glasgow, which will also be very, very similar to the biodiversity COP, which will be 3 weeks before Glasgow, because the two UN process cannot be differing too much. Let's remember, UK is announcing that they will distribute vaccines, but China is not. China has already announced that there will be no effort from China to distribute vaccines. So that's already a given information. And by the way, neither China nor UK, neither UNFCCC nor CBD have released any official documentation about which all of these can be referred to. All I'm saying to you or sharing with you here are either communicated to us verbally or with documents that is not shared publicly. Therefore, if there's any misinterpretation, I'm sorry, but it's not my fault. Our difficulty is that we are not allowed or we are not able to access to any official document as of today, neither biodiversity nor in the climate process, which is of course a huge concern in terms of transparency and in terms of access to information. Our expectation is that COP has to be done in person, because the parties would like to officially give the political leadership to China for the biodiversity and to UK for the climate. This can be done only when parties are present and they can vote by party vote. They raise the flag of one country. And this flag can be raised by anyone who is appointed by their Minister of Foreign Affairs or Minister of Environment. It is called credentials. Credentials can be given to anyone if this country is happy with that. So instead of a Minister of Environment delegation or minister going to an event, this could be done by the ambassador resident in this country. Imagine the ambassador of Tanzania to China or ambassador of Colombia to UK. They can be having the credentials. They can go to Glasgow or Kunming. They can carry the flag and they can agree that the COP is started and they adopt or elect UK and China. Then, once this is done, the presidency can say that the official agenda is now starts with the high-level segment, which is heads of state level, as was planned in as you've seen. This could be in person still, because heads of state have enough mechanisms to secure their travels without too much limitations. So they can come in, and in the second day, they can also allow some stakeholders. We don't know which, whether it's indigenous people, youth, and women, or trade unions, or citizen organizations, whether it will be worked with constituencies, we don't know. They can be invited to those rendezvous. Some of those can be vaccinated via the embassy, and whether they accept this or not, because it's also an ethical question. When there is a country which is going through serious vaccine issues, just to get a vaccine, because that will give you an eligibility to go to a meeting in Glasgow, will create huge difficult discussions in those countries. Those who receive this will be sometimes blamed. They will not be welcome, that's for sure. Anyone who's traveling to those COPs will receive huge stress on top of normal COP stress. And then, because you remember in COP in Paris in 2015, the first 2 days there were no side events, no exhibits, and stakeholders were not allowed. They were only given one ticket to watch the discussions. So on the first 2 days, there will be no side events, no exhibits. Afterwards, the presidency can say that now this is virtual and negotiations may be following the same logic of the May-June sessions. Again, no decisions, and this can be postponed until the next one. But COP is taking place in a hybrid format. We as ICLEI hope this would be a realistic scenario to consider. Under these conditions, the summit of local and regional governments, the pavilions we will all think about, our delegations will have to be discussed, but it's too early for us to agree on anything now, neither within the constituency nor with the Glasgow and Scottish government, unfortunately, because we're still waiting for guidance from UNFCCC and the UK, and let's wait and see. That is what we can do, and we're just communicating our pressure to the partners. Here is a calendar. I will not go into details, but in July, we will have several events like Regions 4 Summit, UK Net Zero Leaders Summit, LGA Conference. We will have Africa and Asia Pacific Ministerials, Climate Weeks. And Urban October will be a huge agenda for all of us, for local and regional governments. We will have a number of events, ministerial in the COP26, pre-COP26, Daring Cities, World Health Day, World Habitat Day, World Cities Day, Innovate for Cities, a number of opportunities. That's giving us the power that before we reach to COP, there will be a surge of local and regional governments and the sustainable urbanization as an element of climate COP and the biodiversity COP. With this, I'd like to conclude. I know we have limited time left, 15 minutes. I thank you for your patience. I know it's not easy to keep the attention to one person showing all the slides and speaking. I don't know how many of you were attentive to this presentation, but now the floor is yours. Anyone who wants to share any ideas, you can raise your hands, you can type in Q&A box, you can speak, or alert me. Those who have access to these screens, feel free to make yourself visible. I see one hand raised. Let me check. There's also one chat box question. So let's start with the attendee raising hand. I hope I will be able to see this person. Yann-Francois, fantastic, fantastic. Yann-Francois from City of Paris. Jan, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, Yunus. Hi, everyone. Thank you for all the news that you gave to us, and thank you for attending, I think, all the virtual negotiations of SB 52 for us. I think it was a huge work and very tiring work with the different time zones. One question, because of course what you present in the last slide about the calendar is not very optimistic for us, for the negotiation and for the presence of cities, because if we talk about maybe a roundtable on the race to zero mayors on the first day, how we can imagine that if there is not virtual, the presence of the mayor on the first day, 10 days after, it will be a huge challenge, even for European one. But another thing, you didn't talk, and don't know if you have any news, if Glasgow, the city of Glasgow, is still hoping to organize a mayor summit, virtual or physical, in person. Do you have any news about that?
Okay, I see Georgia also has her question, so maybe we could also, Jan, let me read her question and then try to respond to this point that you raised. Georgia Rambelli, Georgia is our colleague from ICLE, but also she's now leading in the Global Covenant of Mayor Secretariat. She has written in the chat box, understanding that the context process is still not fully clear, could you summarize what members of this constituency can do to activate and prepare for COP? For example, you mentioned opening up applications for side events, and in the past you spoke about local and regional governments pavilion. Is there anything that should be done in preparation to UNFCCC presidency's decisions on next steps? Ladislas, also there's another input. Let me read this. Ladislas from Bralga, Secretary General of Rwanda Local Governments Association. Dear Yunus, thank you for keeping us posted. I guess the travel restrictions due to COVID-19 and its variants remain critical challenges for UK as COP26 presidency. There is need to keep monitoring the trends because the COP26 remains vulnerable under such circumstances. And Eva from CMR, the European Network of European Cities and Towns, Municipalities. Hi, Yunus. Is the Local Leaders Summit confirmed for 1st of November or Thursday, 11th of November? So, Jan, especially I read all these because some of them are very similar to the points that you rightfully raised, and these are just common sense. I also see hands up from Bruce Robertson. Shall we just also give the floor to Bruce Robertson? And Bruce Robertson, can you introduce yourself first? Because the name doesn't ring the bell immediately to me. I'm sorry if I missed you, but please introduce yourself first. Can you unmute yourself? Patricia, are you able to unmute Bruce? Okay.
He's self-muted, so he needs to unmute himself.
Okay. Bruce Robertson, can you unmute yourself so that you can speak? If not, you can type it into chat box or Q&A. And I see, meanwhile, Alfredo Redondo from the Coalition for Urban Transition, another dear colleague, has raised another question in the Q&A box. And he says, not sure if I missed this, but in the middle of all the uncertainties of presidential or versus virtual, are there any news on the requirement for spatial visas to enter to UK for COP26? Okay, also a valid question, Alfredo. Thanks a lot. I cannot see Bruce raising hand, but let's continue because we can come in the second round for that part if needed from Bruce. So this issue about, first of all, we see, I know, as far as I know, Duncan Booker from Glasgow City Council, our dear friend, and his task is even more challenging than mine because everybody's knocking on the doors of Duncan. He's also here. What I can say, and Duncan, feel free to compliment if I have anything missed or not correct. Glasgow is waiting for all the information as well. They have opened the doors to the LGMA for a meaningful engagement, but as long as there is an event or there is an engagement meaningful to take place, they will be able to do this, of course. So Glasgow is waiting for, like all of us, what is the best moment, what is the best format to convene a leaders event. Therefore, I think it is too early to say, and that connects to the discussion that Eva has said. If we will have a meeting of leaders, if it is in person, will the majority be in around the 2nd of November? Does it make sense to do it there, or on the Citizen Built Environment Day? Obviously, the same people, it's unlikely that they can travel twice. So there will be a choice. The option could be one of them virtual, one of them in person. We also have, and that connects to the question that Georgia raised, for example, and we have asked the LGMA members to fill in our shared document that share with us what is the response you received from your application to the UK managed zones. For example, the LGMA, on behalf of LGMA, we applied for a 3 hours event in the IMAX, and this is announced as eligible. We know COSLA led and other applications. So will we make a combination of a big event in IMAX because physically it's great, and then maybe we go to a reception at the City Hall, or vice versa? That could be options we can consider. But all needs to be discussed, has to be depending on who will be present, when, and how meaningful is to call it as a summit. I mean, restless speaking, whether it's appropriate to call it a summit, I'm not sure yet. We have to think about it. But Glasgow and Scottish government have their doors wide open for LGMA constituency. I can guarantee that they will do their own flexibilities because they're also receiving so many invitations or requests. But for them, LGMA constituency is a priority. They want to accommodate to the extent possible what we can do together. Elsa Lefebvre, you mentioned the multi-level action pavilion and summit. Will there be a call for application for events on the pavilion? Is there a way to engage in the summit? Yes, Elsa, yes. We know that for the moment, the announcement for the pavilions is sent to the designated contact points of accredited organizations. ICLE and 20 or more of those organizations have received this. We have been saying that since the beginning that we will apply for a blue zone pavilion, which was not the case since Copenhagen. We had blue zone pavilions only in Copenhagen. Other pavilions in Paris and in Bonn were all green zone. So we will try again a big moment to be in the blue zone. This is costly, and we are in touch with especially a spatial collaboration with our partners. I'm not entitled to announce yet, but among them is the Scottish government. We would consider that we will apply for it and we will approach for other partners that we can collaborate together in the both financing and management of this space. And the conditions were still not clear. We will keep informed some of the partners involved in this process. We are also aware the Global Alliance for Building and Construction is also applying for a real life pavilion in the blue zone. We would like to see ICLE as part of the task force of COP26 of the GABC, also in the Human Settlements Group. We would like to see the synergy between those pavilions We could see how we can help each other. And there are other pavilion applications maybe coming up. It will be good. Everyone keeps us informed in the LGMA so that we're aware, so that we can unite our forces or make synergies as appropriately. Jose Fonseca is asking what is exactly the Blue Zone commercial pavilion space. This is the space where delegations are reserving for a space where they can keep like a networking area and presentation area. This is only for those who can access to the Blue Zone with UNFCCC accreditation, which means not everybody can enter to it. And this, because it's a bonus, it's not part of the official negotiations, there is a certain cost. If you go to any expo, be it Carbon Expo, be it an Agriculture Expo, be it a Food Expo, be it a Commercial Engineering Expo, these have fancy settings, visual rooms. These are the places where partners or organizations slightly show off their vision, and it's like a presentation of marketing of your work, but it's also a space where you can meet. And that's why we are trying to use the space, because in the UNFCCC side events, there is only 1 or 2 events we can think about it. If we can have a pavilion for 2 weeks in the negotiation zone, we could share more information about our constituency, and we can interact with the negotiators, with the UNFCCC parties, and with the partners in the Blue Zone, which are the ones who are influencing the outcome. There is also a pavilion in the Green Zone, but this is much more towards to the outer world. This is for the people of Glasgow or anyone who wants to visit. The discussions there are still valid also, but it is not necessarily is part of the official negotiation process. That's slightly the challenge between those spaces. I hope I was clear on that. Georgia, coming to your question, I mean, we as constituency focal points, the 9 constituencies, we are having regular meetings with the presidency, COP26 presidency. We are having regular meetings with the UNFCCC Secretariat in terms of conveying our messages. We have shared with you what we have provided as input. Other than that, I think, let's remember, Mayor of Garcetti is part of Friends of COP group. He is the only mayor or local leader in this Friends of COP group of consultants or experts. We know Cities and Regions Advisory Council of the UK exists, and this next meeting will be in July. We can also communicate more information to champions or the consultations, or send letters. But honestly speaking, I think champions in the UK presidency have all heard what we are telling them very clear, and they said that it is loud and clear. The question is that what will they decide now? That's the issue. And under these conditions, we just hope that COP25 Bureau hopefully have a discussion in last week, and this heads of delegation, and we would expect them to guide us what is the final decision, because whatever they decide, we will abide by. I mean, we don't have the luxury not to challenge this, but it may not be our ultimate or best choice, but we just have to follow the final decision. So I suggest let's give 2 or 3 weeks more, and let's stay tuned, let's stay connected. We have emails, we have shared documents, we can keep each other informed, and we for sure we will make more available information as soon as it is available to us, so that we can make sure that we have a better coordination. We had worked with the working group, the additional working group, which is the logos that you see beneath these presentations. We would like to make them much more activated, and we are open for your proposals and comments as well. Ladislas from Rwanda, definitely a COP, a physical COP without an appropriate vaccination sounds extremely unrealistic in terms of making big negotiations. But a very procedural and a ceremonial COP in person, where Rwanda is represented by the ambassador of Rwanda, where Uganda is represented by representative of ambassador of Uganda, or Canada or US, is much more likelihood to expect. And this is politically and diplomatically doable. Nothing is preventing this. And this gives the relaxation, because you are all aware, we didn't discuss anything about accommodation. I mean, there are information that all books, all rooms are booked. and for 2 weeks, there's no refund. I cannot believe this to happen. We as local and regional governments are all use public money. We're all accountable for this kind of losses. It's impossible for us to make any reservation under these conditions. So if we are aware that it will not be massive amount of mobilization, we can also manage our logistics and travel and visa applications. And coming onto the specific question of visa, the UK presidency announced that for those who are receiving the blue zone badges, which is extremely limited per organization, they will receive a special visa recommendation letter, which is usually the practice. But this doesn't apply to any of those who are participating in the green zones. For the green zones, traditional UK visa process apply, as far as we know as of today. But things may change over the coming days. So that's what I can respond. I'd like to come to a conclusion. When are the badges of UN being allocated? Well, we have no information, no information communicated yet. We have colleagues from the UNF Secretariat, but I don't want to throw them onto fire in this call because they are doing their best as well to help us, and I see they've already left. So as of today, there's no information when the allocation will be done, because it depends on what is the capacity on, or how many people are allowed to enter into a room in a given moment. And they don't know this because the UK has not shared this yet with the UNFCCC. And if they say that this will be a space for 10,000 people, then people will ask, how do you expect these 10,000 to come? Are they all vaccinated? And they're already saying that, look, we don't have vaccines even for our own elder people in our countries. So I cannot come, and I will not let an event to happen in person if I'm not there in person. And it's like a chicken and egg. There is a need for someone to take out its Gordian sword and just cut it off, and once and for all. And this can only be done by political leaders. And that's why the meeting on next Wednesday, 30th of June, heads of delegation, is critical, because that could be the moment when UK can communicate officially to the parties their plans, and the parties can respond whether they accept or not, and then the official announcement can go out. We don't know whether this will happen either. So a lot of questions, probably more than that we have discussed here. Yes, I'm informed by my colleague that we have to close the session. Sorry, there's a session going on, a parallel that this reserved line has to be booked. Sorry for this thing, but I appreciate all your comments. You will receive the response, the links, and the questions as well. And thanks for your engagement. Keep up, keeping us informed in the network and the LGMA communication channels as well. Thanks a lot. The session is closed.